How much is a human life worth? Federal agencies put a dollar value on lives all the time. And according to them, it's worth about 10 million US dollars. But to tell you how they got that number, we have to take you back in time to a more genteel and tranquil era, the 1980s. In 1982, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, also known as OSHA, was proposing this rule that businesses should have to label hazardous chemicals. Asbestos, acids, flammable things. Back then, there was nothing that required companies to warn workers. If you spill this barrel, you might get melted by acid. So OSHA took this proposal to label things and ran the numbers on it. And they found that adding these labels would save 4,750 lives and cost just $2.6 billion. Confident in their slam dunk case, they took it to get the old rubber stamp from the higher-ups. That's when they ran into a problem.
These human lives are not worth the labels.
See, there's this rule that federal safety regulations have to go through a cost-benefit test. And to do that, they need to say a lost life is worth a certain amount of money. And according to their calculations, this $2.6 billion program would only save $1.4 billion worth of lives. It didn't pass their math test. At the time, the way they calculated the value of life was pretty straightforward. They asked, what is the cost of death? Both the medical costs associated with your death and any lost earnings, as in the money you would have made at work if you hadn't died. And in 1982, the average cost of death came out to around $300,000, or about $800,000 in today's dollars. But OSHA, they were like, this cannot possibly be right. How can safety labels not be worth it? And so they appealed. They appealed it all the way to the top. Well, the top here was actually over one building, the office of the Vice President, George H.W. Bush. He looked at this issue and he said, gee, this seems like a technical dispute. Let's get somebody in here to settle it. They called W. Kip Viscusi, economist extraordinaire. He steps in and is like, I'll tell you what's wrong. This cost of death you're using, it doesn't make any sense. Is a person only worth what they make at work? Are people with no income worth nothing? Should we do nothing to protect them? Instead, we should be looking at the value people put on their own lives. So Kip starts putting together a new set of numbers. He figures people are putting a dollar value on their own lives all the time based on the jobs that they do. Specifically, how risky a job is and how much they need to be paid to do it. For example, a construction worker generally gets paid more than a ticket taker at a movie theater. And some part of that extra pay is to pay for the added risk of that job. Back then, in 1982, there was a 1 in 10,000 chance of dying at work. So for every 10,000 workers, the odds were one person in that group would die on the job. And Kip Viscusi found that to convince workers to accept the risk that it might be them, companies had to pay each of them an extra $300 a year. So $300 times 10,000 people, that gives you $3 million. Nowadays, that figure is closer to $10 million. You know, inflation. That became the value of life, the statistical value of life. So Kip and the folks at OSHA got together and plugged in this new number. And it changed everything. Now, the 4,750 lives saved from putting labels on dangerous stuff wasn't worth just $1.4 billion worth of lives. It was worth $14 billion worth of lives, way more than what it would cost to add labels.
I now understand the true value of human life.
And that's why we have hazardous chemical labels today.
Support for NPR comes from Okta, a leader in identity-driven security.